In yesterday's session, when we started the concept of Hibernate, the first thing that we understood is like ORM, which is nothing but object relation model. So in an ORM, the basic concept is like we are trying to bridge the gap between the relational tables which are present in the database and the Java side classes. Why? Because a simple example that I can say here is, if suppose if I am going to retrieve a set of records like user records or an employee records from the database, all I do is like the basic configuration is, all I do is I go ahead and retrieve some records and add them into a result set, and in the result set I will add from the result set I will try to retrieve each and every value, and that will be associated into or will be assigned to a property in a DTO, right? So right now what exactly are we doing? Trying to convert the incoming records into objects. So what Hibernate or any ORM tool does is they try to bridge this gap. And also there are few other things that we saw yesterday, like how tables are understood in a database perspective and how the Java side classes can be understood. So these are the basic differences. And also the one most important thing that we understood here is, instead of writing an SQL structured query language, we can write something in the form of a HQL, Hibernate query language. You will understand, like when I say Hibernate query language, it's basically like something which we deal with the current Java classes and their properties instead of tables and columns. Okay, once we see an example, you will get a clear understanding of it. Now, the first step that we saw here is like I gave some reference libraries or added some reference libraries in my project so that my project gets all the features of Hibernate. Then the second step is like created a DTO. Okay. For now, just understand that means I've added two configuration files. We will see these configuration files later, but just understand that these two configuration files that were added will be coming in the next phase. The first one is created a user DTO and with three fields: user ID, name, and password. And the class name is user DTO. Now, if I go ahead and open my database, excuse me, in my database, I see there is a table called user which has user ID, username, and user password, user underscore password as three columns. Now let's try to bridge the gap between this table called user and the Java class called user DTO. Okay, so let me go ahead and do that. So for doing this, so what is the first step? Bridging the gap between them. So in order to bridge the gap between these things, the first configuration that we do is like create a HBM file. Okay, create something called as HBM file. Okay, HBM stands for Hibernate mapping file. Okay, when I say Hibernate mapping file, the first and the foremost thing is we need to map a Hibernate, not Hibernate, we need to map a database table with a DTO, right? Java side class. So why we are doing this? Why? Because whenever we retrieve a record from the database, it would be automatically mapped into an object directly for you. Okay. Once we do all these configurations and see an example, you will clearly understand the advantage of doing this. Okay. But the first step is mapping a table to a class. So I go to a HBM file, user.hbm.xml. Again, this is an XML file with a set of DTDs for writing Hibernate specific tags. Okay, what is the doc type? It is saying the document type is a Hibernate mapping file. Okay, the doc type always tells like what exactly is the type of file that we are trying to write. So in that I am writing a Hibernate mapping file, and all the mappings in the Hibernate mapping file or hbm.xml file will be written inside the opening and closing tags of Hibernate mapping. Okay, inside this we will write some configurations. So what are the configurations? Map a table to a DTO. So they are very simple configurations. So the first configuration that we do here is like see here. This is the table which column name says user underscore ID, user underscore name, user underscore password. So that I will be mapping it to user DTO table to UID, name and password. Okay. Class.
Hey, Raghu.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. This XML right here, which says Hibernate Mapping 3.0,
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of just curious. On when we did Spring and we were using 4.0, right? Our jars,
Mm-hmm.
and on XML we were still working on 3.0. What actually does that do?
What actually does it do? Like a 3.0
This three,
DTD and all? Is that what you're
yeah,
asking?
yeah, yeah. Isn't that like pointing to the jar and stuff?
No, it's basically something like the data type definitions DTD. What exactly they will do is whenever you declare a tag, okay, whenever you declare a tag saying that
Hmm.
okay, they will go ahead and refer to these specific set of libraries defined here. So in general, when I say 3.0, basically they will, yeah, means as you said, like whenever Hibernate releases a version of 3, then what they can say is like they can define a set of DTDs for the 3.0 version, and the 3.0 version might, the tags defined in that version might go ahead and refer to that location. Okay, so it's basically something like the location where
So
you can, yeah,
if
go ahead.
we write like 4.0 just because we're using 4.0 jar,
Mhm.
would that give us issue here or no?
I should not.
Okay.
Hibernate.
Because I think in struts I had trouble with that at first because I was importing the 2.0 strut 2 jars and we were working on 1.3, right?
Oh, Struts 2.0 will definitely have with 1.3. Why? Because there is a major change between 2.0 and 1.3 actually.
Okay.
Okay, so if you see here, I guess like this DTD is still means if you see the last modified is September 18th, 9/25, 2015. Even the most recent release also has the DTD as 3.0 actually if you see here.
Okay. Right,
Okay.
right. Gotcha.
So see here, you see HTTP Hibernate or DTD Hibernate hyphen configuration hyphen 3.0.DTD, right? So generally,
Right.
this is the stuff that we usually paste or use in our XML file in order to tell it that okay, I am trying to use some DTD which is present in the 3.0 actually.
Okay.
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 Okay. So the first mapping that we are looking is like class, the class mapping. In that class mapping, see the tags that I'm going to write. Okay, one second. I think Ravi, everyone else can hear the audio. Okay. Okay. The first tag is like a class. Okay. Okay. The first one is like an ID tag where see here the configurations are very easy and very simple. Name tag and the second one is table tag. Okay, two things, name and table. So what is the name that you want to give here and what is the table name that you want to give? What is the name of the class? See, what is the tag here? Class tag. What is the name of the class? It is com dot easylearn dot dto dot user dto. Okay. Is it a right configuration? Yes, it is a right configuration. I can go ahead and check this and go to that file. Okay. Now, after this, what is the table that I want to map? I want to map this user DTO to a table on the database side, which has a name as user. Okay, which has a name called user. Now, the next question. When I say I want to talk to a table called user, then the next question which comes up is, in which database you want to use a table called user? You are referring to which database? So my question to everyone is, in JDBC, how did we configure all the database properties in a regular JDBC? Using the properties file. Very good. Now my next question. In Spring JDBC template concept, how did we configure all the database properties? The URL, driver class, username, password. Very good. In a config.xml file, right? In a config.xml file. So in that config.xml file, we wrote all the specific configurations exactly which were written in the dot properties file in the previous scenarios, right? So based on those configurations, we are telling our application to connect it to the database. Now, in which database am I referring to this user table? So in order to tell those configurations, the next file that we write is hibernate hyphen cfg.xml file. Okay, hibernate hyphen cfg.xml file. CFG stands for configuration. Okay, hibernate hyphen cfg.xml, a standard naming convention. Now I go back to this file and I will just say control Z, control Z. Okay, since already I just copied those configurations yesterday, let me copy those configurations once again back. Okay, now I will try to explain these configurations step by step. The first, first see here again, this is a Hibernate configuration file. Okay, the main tag that you need to write is Hibernate hyphen configuration. In this, just only understand the first four tags under session factory. Okay, under session factory, we wrote four tags. Okay, what are those four tags? Hibernate connection driver class, connection URL, username, and password. The same old set of configurations. Okay. Okay. So we wrote four configurations: uh, driver class, URL, username, password. So which means we will do some other configurations later, but I am trying to talk to a database called Athena in my MySQL. So this table is being referred from that specific database. Okay, so we will see the rest of the configurations which are written below later. Now the next one, once I am done with the class configuration, the next configuration that we will be writing here is like two set of things, two sets: property and ID. These are the two configurations that I need to write. Now what exactly is the difference between an ID and a property? So if I go to my table, in my table there are two things. One is a user ID and the other one is username and user password. So if I want to associate my primary key column, okay, if I want to associate my primary key column called user underscore ID, I use a property called ID property. Okay, and the next thing, don't don't think that since the user underscore ID has something called as an ID, don't assume that you need to map it to a, a property called ID. That's not the case. Anything which you write in these tags, like an ID tag, that is considered as a primary key in a table. Okay, so ID is nothing but a primary key mapping. So apart from that primary key, which is nothing but user underscore ID, we have two more columns. One is user underscore name, user underscore password. So those two columns are mapped as regular properties in our Hibernate mapping file. Okay, so what I do here is, see here, I'm mapping the regular properties here. So when I say I'm mapping the regular properties, the first thing is, see here, I do have name. Okay, so a property called name. So let me map.
Actually, baby, I'm shipping out.
People
Shipping
can
out?
listen to
Where?
me.
It's not important right now.
So that's what the first one that I map here is the name. Okay, so I will map the ID later. So what is the name property that I'm trying to map here? The name is nothing but again the name. Okay, maybe let me do one thing. Let me change this name to uname or username. Okay, one second. Okay, so I changed name to uname just in order to make sure that the names doesn't mess up. Okay, so let me generate get reference sectors. So what is the first property that I want to map? Uname. Okay, so I say here uname. Okay, see here, the property is uname on the Java side and the column on the database side. Can anyone tell me what is the column on the database side? Any guess? Sai Krishna Adi Vikas. Very good. User underscore name. As simple as that. And I'm already I'm reiterating that the column names or the table names need not be in capital letters. It is case insensitive. Okay. So the next property that I'm trying to map here is the user DTO. It is password. Okay. The password that I'm this property is mapped to the column called as user underscore password. Okay, so I have mapped the rest of the columns. The only thing that is yet to be mapped is called as the primary key. Okay, so let me deal with the primary key. It's also simple, but I need to use a different set of tag called ID. In this ID, the name is equal to, see here, what is the name of the property that we are using? UID stands for user ID, UID, UID, and the column is user underscore ID. This is the column. And now I will add one more feature given by Hibernate itself. The feature is like, let me write it as generator class equal to increment. Now let me explain why I wrote line number 10. If you remember one of the homework problems that we did way long back during our servlets project, the first homework that I gave here is like, hey, go ahead, implement a registration flow where in the registration flow, all you need to do is first you need to check how many users are there, retrieve the maximum user ID, add +1, which is nothing but the new primary key for the new set of record that you are trying to add to a database. That is what we discussed. So I hope anyone remembers, like we wrote a select max of query, added one to it, used that as a primary key, and inserted a new record which is being registered in an object, right? So what did we do in that? We literally are trying to maintain the primary key, check for the primary key, increment the primary key, which means a simple scenario. When I do a select, I do have two records. So if I want to insert the third record from a Java application, first I need to check how many records are there or what is the highest primary key, add one to it and insert a new record. But what Hibernate says is, hey, you don't worry about the primary keys. I will deal with the primary keys. All you need to do is you need to understand how you can add the rest of the columns. Okay, so for doing that, Hibernate gave a specific feature. So I'm using the feature given by Hibernate at line number 10 by writing a generator property which is nothing but a generator class. Okay, now the next question, the next concept. To summarize what I have did in this one, okay, this is the most basic and important configuration. So to summarize what we did, we are trying to bridge the gap between the database table and the Java side class. So now in this mapping, I wrote that, hey, at any point of time, if anyone tells that there is a table called user, then I mean that there is a class called user DTO on the Java side. And at any point of time, if someone says that there is a column called user underscore ID on the database side, then I mean there is a property called UID in the user DTO class. The same way, user underscore name column is associated to this property on the Java side, and this column on the database side in the user table is associated to the property called password on the user DTO side. So we are mapping a Java class and a database table. Is this clear to everyone? Because this is the most important configuration. You are trying to bridge the gap using this mapping files. Okay, that is what we are trying to understand, like how do we bridge the gap. This is the first way. Okay, this is how you bridge the gap between the database table and the class. Okay, if this is done, half of the work is done for you. Okay, yeah, so if this is done, half of the work is done for you. Now the next set of configurations. So once you're done with these configurations, all you want to do is you want to talk to a database, right? You want to talk to a database. So for that, in the configuration file, in a session factory, okay, in a session factory, we configured 4 properties. Okay, 4 properties. That's good. Now the most important configuration, like Hibernate dialect. Okay, Hibernate dialect. The Hibernate dialect that I wrote here is, okay, sorry, let me change this one. So org.hibernate.dialect.oracle dialect. That is what I wrote. So now, if you understand what exactly the dialect is, the dialect helps the users to write queries independent of the underlying platform. Okay, maybe I will show an example and then I will explain the rest of the configurations. So for now, let me change it to MySQL since we are using MySQL. And the other configuration that you need to do in this cfg.xml file is, okay, line number 19. Line number 19, you need to tell in the configuration file that, hey, there is a resource called user.hbm.xml file. If you have multiple files, like if you have one more table, employee table or an address table, you can say that, hey, I'm mapping that address table here, also saying that resource equal to address dot hbm.xml. Like this, you need to give all the entries of the XML file here. Okay, XML files means hbm.xml files. Hibernate mapping XML file configurations must be given in this cfg.xml file. Okay, for now I'm removing this. Now, the next scenario. Once you are done with these two basic set of configurations, the next thing is you need to create an object which can help you in connecting to the database. Now, my first question, till now means considering the basic JDBC concepts. Okay, till now considering the basic JDBC concepts, after writing or after creating the dot properties file and writing all the configurations in it, how did we consider or what is the object that we created for talking to a database? Any guess? Excellent. The answer is the connection object. Do you remember? Like we created a connection object from all the properties that we have configured. Then from the connection object or using the connection object, we used to talk to the database, right? Now in Hibernate, there is something which is equivalent to the connection object, that is nothing but a session. Okay, there is an object which we create now, which is nothing but a session object. Okay, so whatever code I write for a session is again a standard set of code. So under the util package, okay, I am creating something called Hibernate util, and in this Hibernate util I will create a session object. Now my question to everyone, I will write a method which will create a session. So what will be the return type of this method? Session. So the return type of this method would be session. What I say here is public session get session. Control Shift O, import it, or the .hibernate.session is what it is importing. So for now let me just say return null. Okay, now the next step. Here let me try to create a session object first. So in order to create a session object, this is whatever steps that I'm trying to follow are sequence of steps. Okay, so for now let me go to uh, util, not util, let me go to a previous project first, JSP project. So let's log in now. Okay, I'm just reiterating the old concept that we saw. So I'm creating a connection object. So how did we create a connection object? I try to read the properties from the db parameters.properties file. That is the first step. Once I read all the properties, I use something like class.forName and driver manager.get connection and created a connection object finally. That is how we got the connection object by reading all the parameters, right? The same way in Hibernate util also, for creating a session object, all I need to do is I need to go ahead and read all the configurations that I have written. Now, where did I write all the configurations? In this Hibernate, I wrote all the configurations in a file called hibernate-cfg.xml. Okay, this is the file where I wrote all the configurations. So the next step that I do here is I need to read that configuration file. So to read that configuration file, the first step that I take here is configuration config equal to new configuration, control shift O, org.hibernate.cfg.configuration. The second one is what I am importing. Okay. So sometimes you might think, hey, why when we import, sometimes it shows like two suggestions, but sometimes it will not show this one, will directly import. Why? Because there are, based on the jars that we've added, it shows like, hey, there is a class called configuration both in Hibernate package and also in Java X security package. So which configuration file you want to import? So I say that, hey, let me import from the Hibernate. So if there is a discrepancy, like if the same class name is present at multiple locations, that pop-up shows and will give us an option to select from a specific package. Okay. So now I created a configuration object. So once I create a configuration object, the next thing is I need to tell the configuration object, okay, I need to tell this object that, hey, configuration object, go ahead and read all the configurations which are written in an XML file. So all I need to say is config.configure. From which file it needs to read the configurations? Tell me, everyone. Exactly. From that Hibernate cfg.xml file. Is there difference between both configuration classes? Yeah, that's correct, right? See, let me take that question. So someone has asked the question saying that, is there a difference between the classes between the two packages, like one which is showing in Hibernate and the one which is showing in Java X security? So let us take a simple example. Here I do have a package called TTO, and here I do have a package called DAO, and here a package called util. So if suppose in all the three packages I write the same class called ABC, but in util I write some functionality. In DTO I write a different functionality. In DAO I write a different functionality. Okay, so I write three classes with the same names but different functionalities. If someone wants to import an ABC class, they need to know, hey, do they need to import from DAO package or a DTO package or a util package? So why? Because each class, even though the name is the same, the functionalities are different, right? The same way, since we are dealing with Hibernate, we need a Hibernate configuration class. Okay, hope that answers. And continuing with this, so I need to tell that, hey, there is a package called, or there is a file called hibernate-cfg. Go there and read that file. So I say hibernate-cfg.xml. Okay, hibernate-cfg.xml. So now my configuration object has read the configuration file and understood all the configurations, which means like in the configuration file I wrote, hey, to which database it needs to connect, blah blah blah, everything I wrote. Now the next set of statements that I'm going to write are again like a standard set of statements where they define saying that a registry needs to be built, and from there you need to get a session factory, and from there you need to get a session. But the final concept here is a simple scenario that I would like to explain here is, when we saw the concept of design patterns, we understood that there is a pattern called as factory design pattern. So what is the factory design pattern doing? The factory design pattern internally, okay, creates objects for you. It will hide. See, if you remember, I gave the example of a Nike store. Select a shoe model, select a size and submit. What will the Nike store do? The Nike store will take your order, will create a shoe and will deliver it for you. So how the shoe is being made is internally hidden. You don't know. All you need to give is a specific input, you get the output. So the Nike store is a factory which can create shoes for you. Okay, any shoe that you want, it can create. The same way, the one that you see here, session factory. session factory is a factory of sessions. If you ask for a session, you will get a session from the session factory. How the session object is created, you don't worry about it. So this is again a concept of factory design pattern where the internal implementation is hidden for you, but when you ask for a session object, the session factory will give based on all these configurations and based on some internal settings. Okay, so the next setting that I show here is service registry builder. Service registry builder equal to new service registry builder. Shift O, import the service registry builder dot apply settings. Sorry, apply settings and say that cfg dot config dot get properties, get the properties from that, and then from here, from this service registry builder, I am going to get my session factory first. Session factory object. Session equal to config dot build session factory, and I say service registry builder dot build service registry. Control Shift O, import that. So these are all some standard set of codes that we write, and the next one is like from this session factory object SF, that is where from that I create a session object. So I say session factory dot open session. Okay, so once a session is created, that is what I return back. Okay, so see here, the basic configuration is read the configuration file, create a session factory from that, and get a session from that session factory. So the Hibernate util class, what it does is, for everyone it gives a session object back. Okay, it gives a session object back to everyone. Now the next concept that we deal here is how to create a DAO class and how to call this Hibernate util method or class and get a session and connect to the database. Okay, there's the next concept. Now, so in the DAO, as we already know, like the DAO is where I write all the basic interactions with the database, right? So I say new class user DAO. So in user DAO, the first step that I write here is like a main method. So in the main method, I put it equal to new. Okay, so Hibernate util object I have created. Then from this util I create a session object. Session equal to util dot get session. Okay, Control Shift O, session object I have imported. Deal done. So I got this session object from here. So using the session object, I can go ahead and talk to the database. Okay, so now the first and the foremost scenario. So what I will show here is, first I will show a simple example of a database interaction using an SQL. Then after using an SQL, I will try to change the same thing into a HQL, Hibernate query language. Okay, so the first thing. Uh, I hope everyone remembers that the basic SQL for fetching all the records from the database is nothing but select start from the table name. Okay, so since we have a table called user here, so what I do is like I would like to fetch all the information. So the information which if I say like select start from user, it tries to retrieve the records as one Raghu secret and two Naveen top secret. So these are the two things that will be returned for me. Now what I do here is the first step. I say SQL query. Okay, since I'm writing an SQL query, I write SQL query equal to session dot create SQL query. I need to specify that I'm writing an SQL query, and I say select star from user table. Okay, this is what I do. And the next scenario that I will explain here is when I say I'm using an SQL in Hibernate, okay, or else let me just go back, explain one scenario and come to this one. Okay, um, let me go to the JDBC project, read operation. Okay, so what is that we did in read operation? In the read operation, the first one, select star from user, and all the records which are coming from the database are stored in result set. Okay, they are stored in result set. So once the output is stored in result set, all I do is I try to store or I try to associate this result set into a DTO. Okay, so now I manually do this by writing a while loop while rs.next, and the next scenario is, if you remember, I create a user object and say user.setUID equal to rs.getInt of set name, set password. Like this I need to do. Suppose if I have some 50 columns, okay, I need to write this configuration every time saying that user.setUserID, set username, user password, blah blah blah. All these things I need to set. And the next one is, let us assume that by mistake if username is an int, okay, or if user id is a string, and if you forget and if you try to map it as an int, during compile time everything is good, but during runtime that is when it throws an exception for you and all these things. So you need to take an extra care saying that okay, what is the specific type of output that I'm trying to get and where I need to associate this one. And also, like if it is an user id, you need to exactly know the column names saying that user underscore id. So these are the set of mappings you need to do every time. Okay, storing in a result set, iterating on a result set, trying to retrieve each and every column and associate that column to each and every property and return back. So that is what you need to do in a regular JDBC project, right? But now we are using something called as Hibernate. So since we are using Hibernate, first let me show an example with an SQL, then go to HQL. In SQL, so I'm writing a query called select star from user, and the next step that you need to do here is you need to mention query dot add entity. You need to tell, hey, I'm going to get back a class, I'm going to get back results which are of type user DTO dot class. This is what you need to set explicitly. So whenever a result comes back from this database, from this table called user, then the Hibernate can understand that okay, it needs to be mapped to an entity called this user DTO. Okay, and the next one is list, a list of, I can get more than one user, right? List of user DTOs users list equal to query dot control shift O, import the list, and then what I can say is like for I'll just print them. So what is that? What is the output that I get? So user DTO is the output that I get, or DTO in, or I'll explain all this once again. Users list, and here I say like sysout. Let me just print name itself, name alone, not printing much anything much. User dot get new name. Yeah, I will explain all these scenarios once again. Okay. So let me write some basic. Okay, not sysout equal to dot get UID ID name password. Okay, I printed it. So now see here. Let me go ahead and debug this and explain scenarios one by one. Read operation.java. Okay. So there are two things that I'm going to explain here. Understand carefully and try to understand the difference between these two things. So first let me explain the old JDBC project. So now I'm explaining a JDBC project's read operation just for a little bit more understanding. So now I get a database connection. So then I create a statement object, and I say in the statement object, I say statement.execute query select star from user. So as soon as I select, all the records will be present in the RS, in the result set. So next thing what I need to do, I need to check, hey, rs.next, which will say something like whether are there any elements in the result set or not. So it says that yes, there are elements. Why? Because there are two records which are coming from the database. So now those are the two records, but what is our aim? We want to retrieve the data from the database records and insert into an object, a user object. Okay, so I am trying to say user dot set user id means this, we already saw that, but a simple example, initially 0 null null. So all these three values will be updated to the values coming from the database. See, one Raghu secret, the first record has been added, and this object I'm trying to store it into a list. Okay, now it adds the second record also to Naveen top secret. Now I am trying to add that object also into this list. Done. Any more records? No more records. So now if you see the size of the list, the size of the list is 2. So what did we do? Like complete the execution. So if you see the scenario, we wrote a lot of code for mapping the output records into appropriate objects and store those objects into list. Now let's come back to the Hibernate concept. So let me just debug this Hibernate. At line number 14, I'm creating an object for util, and I say session equal to util dot get session. I say F5, go into that. So line number 13 will go ahead and read my configuration file hibernate-cfg.xml, and once it reads the configuration file, it tries to build a service registry, then a session factory, and then give me a session. Oh, one second. Okay, okay. let me continue explaining what happened step by step. Okay, let me pause here for a second and let me go back to this Hibernate util. Okay, and in this Hibernate util, if you notice, like whenever it has executed this set of statements, session factory and all, did you see here it wrote something called as drop table if exists user. So who wrote these queries? Hibernate wrote those queries for me. So what did it say? Hey, drop the table called user if it is already present in the database. Then it again wrote a query called create table user underscore id integer not null username variable blah blah blah. It wrote all this query for me. So the scenario which I want to explain here is, if I go back to the configuration file, I wrote a concept called hbm2ddl.auto create. So when I say hbm2ddl, what it does is, based on these mappings, okay, based on these mappings, it says that okay, I am talking to a user table. So if I say a create, okay, if I say a create scenario, what it will do is it will always go ahead, drop a table which is existing in the database, and it will recreate the scenario for me. So let me change it to, let me be create for now, and it has created a session object. And since it has dropped the table and it has created, if you see here, there is no data right now in my table. There is no data. Well and good. Now what is that I'm trying to do? I'm executing a query called select star from user. Okay. So now as soon as I execute line number 19, it will fire a query. See here, the query it has fired is select star from user. Now, since there are no records, it did not enter and it did not show anything for me. Now, let me make some changes. So, first thing, let me go to the database, insert some values, execute first query, execute second query, execute third query. So, I executed line number 8 and 9 and inserted two records. And in the Hibernate mapping file, I just go back and say instead of this, validate. Validate will not drop the table for me. It will just validate the configurations. And now see here. Once again, I'm going to explain the same old concept, user do.java. Let me debug it. Say F5. And here, it will read the hibernate.config.xml, create a service registry builder. From there, create a session factory. Now, if you see here, let me pause here and go back and explain something which is printed in the console. In the console, did you notice here everyone team, like it is trying to connect or use this driver, and the URL that it is using is this Athena, means this is the schema to which it is connecting, and the username is root, and the password, it is not ideally printing since it is a password, the password is password. So it is doing these things, and then the next scenario that it is doing is the schema validator. It is validating. So it checks, hey, did we make any changes in the configuration file? If so, what are the configurations it are? So it validates. So all the configurations are perfect, which means we did not change any configurations. So it did not do anything. So it checks for the columns. So the columns are user underscore password, user underscore ID, user underscore name. So the basic scenario which happens here is it is trying to validate all the basic set of configurations if they are fine or not. Okay. So now instead of re-explaining, continuing from here, let me make some changes and explain few more concepts here. So now I go back to Hibernate I go back to user.hbm.xml file and say that the user underscore name underscore temp I do here. Okay, I made changes to the column name. Instead of user underscore name, I made it as user underscore name underscore temp. Okay, I save it come back and execute this user DAO. Debug it, F6, and at line number 15 I say F5, execute this, this, and see what happens when I execute line number 16. See, it has read these configurations, Athena and blah blah blah, user root and password it has done, and now something went wrong actually. Now see in the console, it says that the columns that it has in the table are user underscore password, user underscore ID, user underscore name. These are the columns which are present in the table. Now, if you see, there is an Hibernate exception. It says, hey, there is a column called user underscore name underscore temp, which is missing in the table athena.user, which means in this table in the database there is a column which is missing, which must be there ideally, but it is not there. So that is what it complains, saying that hey, this configuration must be ideally present and there is a mismatch in the configurations. So it starts complaining that if suppose, means why I'm explaining this scenario is, if suppose if you do some mistakes in your configuration while creating a session itself, it will tell you, hey, there are some mismatches, please go ahead and rectify those issues, then only it can map that stuff. Is it clear? Like what is it doing when it is trying to create a session factory and session? Okay, that's good. So now I will show one more use of Hibernate. Okay, one more use of Hibernate. So let me go back and keep this as username underscore temp only. Okay, I'm not changing this temp. But see here, the other thing that I do here is, instead of schema called Athena, I will say Athena 111. Okay, 111. And let me make some changes here. I go to this MySQL and say create schema. Let me create a schema. Control enter. Okay. Put a semicolon at line number 13 and execute this schema. Line number 15 I execute. So create schema Athena 111 successful. So now if I refresh, so the schema Athena is successful. 111 is successfully created and there are no tables in it. Now the next concept. Since there are no tables, the advantage of Hibernate is you can use Hibernate to create tables for you. Okay. So what I will do here is I will come to line number 17 in the hibernate.config.xml hyphen. I say create. Okay. Now let me do one step here. I go back to user DAO and debug this once again and say F6, F5. Oh, okay. Something. One second. One second. What happened? One second. Did it create something? I just stopped it. Okay, it did not create anything. Okay, did not create. Let me just place a breakpoint at line number 15. Okay, I say go back to user DAO, debug this one, say F8 directly so that it can jump to that specific line. See here, what is that I am trying to do is F6 and in hibernate.config.xml, what is the schema to which I want to connect to? I am connecting to a schema called Athena 111. Now, do I have a table which is present in this schema? The answer is no. There is no schema in this. Sorry. There is no table present in this schema. Okay. Now, but what did I tell? Go ahead and create is the operation that I gave. Now, if I say F6, just one step, see here. In this, it is connecting to a schema called Athena 111. Okay. Now, did you notice here? It says drop table if exists. Okay. If exists, drop a table called user, and then the second query it is firing is create table user with user underscore ID, user underscore name underscore temp, and user underscore password. So it is creating a table for you, and I will complete the execution and go back and refresh these schemas and see here. And right now it did not insert any data. So let me just select this, select rows. So did you see here user underscore ID, user underscore name underscore temp, user underscore password, which means this is present in Athena 111 schema and a table called user. The power of Hibernate is it can create tables for you. You need not worry about, hey, I don't have a table. How can I deal with Hibernate? So if you already have the mapping files, you can say hibernate.create means HBM to DDL auto as create, which will create the tables for you. Is that concept clear to everyone? Okay. I'm just reverting back this to validate, and also the schema from Athena 111 to Athena. I'm just going back to our basics, and then in the hibernate.hbm.xml HBM.xml, I'm just removing that temp and I'm saying user underscore name, and let me go back to the database and delete this 111. This is just for your testing purpose. I just told. I said drop schema, drop now. It has dropped. So if I refresh, the schema is on Athena 111. Okay. Now the next step. Where is this? Okay. And the next one you need to understand here is I wrote a configuration called show underscore SQL as true. That is the reason why if Hibernate fires any query for us, it will display it in the console. It will print it in the console. Okay, that is the meaning of line number 15. So I go to user DAO, and one last time I'm just trying to debug, and I say F8, build that service registry, service factory, then get the session object for you. Now we are going back and connecting to Athena and create a session object and return that session object to you. Now if you see here, a session object is given for you. It is not null. So using that session object, you can connect to a database. Now in Hibernate, Hibernate gave the flexibility of writing both SQL and HQL. We are yet to see a HQL, but Hibernate gave a flexibility to write SQL and HQL. So if you want to write an SQL, you need to use these kind of syntaxes like SQL query. You need to select or create an SQL query like that. You need to specify. Why? Because you need to explicitly tell which query you are using. Okay. So SQL. So you wrote a query, SQL query, and then whenever the user is talking about a table called user on the database side, he is referring to a user DTO on the Java side. So that is what you need to add at line number 18, add entity. This table is equivalent to this DTO on the Java side. That is what you need to write at line number 18. And at line number 19, all you do is like the query object, right? Query dot list. That's all you need to say. Once you say that, there is no more hassle of result set, trying to iterate on a result set, blah blah, nothing is there. So do you see here in our read operation, in our old example, we wrote a lot of statements. See, we wrote all these statements for copying everything into an object and copying into a list finally. But in this concept, all I do is just write line number 19, one simple statement saying that, hey, copy all the output into a list of user DTOs. That is what I write. So I execute this. As soon as I say line number 19, it says select star from user is executed, and if I hover my mouse on users LST at line number 19, it shows that there are two objects. There are two user DTO objects which are already mapped, and if I can iterate and print them, you can clearly see what is the output. See, the output is 1 Raghu secret, 2 Naveen top secret. So isn't it easy for us to fetch the data and associate with Java objects instead of we trying to do all the configurations, mappings and all those things every time? It is a one-time setting and one-time mapping that you do, which will be of use every time. Is it clear to everyone? Okay. Yeah, that's good. So now the next step that I do here is I will try to show how to use a HQL. Okay. There are many different ways of using HQL here. So let me show you the same query. Select star from user, how you can use using a HQL. Okay. So I use the same thing. Users list equal to session dot, no more create SQL query. I say create query, and see the type of query that I'm writing. What is that I want to fetch? I want to fetch all the records from user table. Okay. Now, one quick question to everyone. In a mapping file, I wrote some configurations like the user table on the database means some class on the Java side. That is what I wrote. So what is the class name? User DTO, right? So see the query that I'm writing at line number 21. I no longer deal with the columns and tables. I only deal with properties and classes. So what is the class name? From case sensitive, from user DTO. That is what I write. Dot list. That's all. As simple as that. One single line. 21. It's nothing but session dot means, even here you can write everything in one single line. Dot add entity of user DTO dot class and the dot list. You can write everything in one single line also here also. But see here, what did I do? User DTO. What is this? User DTO means this is a Java class. I'm not writing a table name there. So let me say the user list equal to null. So why I am explicitly setting it to null? Because at line number 19, user list will be populated with the data which is coming from the database, right? So I'm just making it null so that fresh data will be associated at line number 22. Okay. Now see here. Let me go ahead and run this and show you some concepts. I'm going to debug this scenario. I'm not going to explain all these concepts again, like debug these scenarios and all. Put one breakpoint at line number 21. Debug it. In the background, it creates a session object, blah blah blah, everything. It executes the query at line number 19. Okay. If you go to the console, it has already executed select star from user, and the data is already populated into users list. But I'm explicitly making it as null. See here. Now users list is null. So I will freshly populate the data at line number 22. Now two things that I want you to observe here. Once I execute this query, see the output that is printed in the console, and also the null which is being shown here will be populated with some data. See here. Once I say F6, did you see here? It prints some long query in the console. Let's not worry about that long query. I will explain this query. And if you see the users list, it again populates the data for you. Okay. So now two things. Did you ever say that, hey, fetch the data from the user table. Did you ever say that in line number 22? We never said that. But still, how did it go to the user table only and fetch the user records? Any answer? Anyone? Any guess? Like when I say user DTO, how exactly it is only going to user table? Why is it not saying that configuration not found, or it is not going to some other tables in the schemas? Any guess? Sai, Vikas, Adi? Very good, Krishna. The configuration is written in the mapping file. Did you notice here? I said, hey, at any point of time, if I say a DTO called user DTO, I mean I am referring to a table called user. So because of the configuration at line number 7, when I say user DTO, it talks about the user table on the database side. Okay. Excuse me. So now if I do this, if I execute this one, it again prints the values for you. Okay, not this. When I say F8, it again prints the values for you. Now let me explain the query which is being printed here. Okay. So before I explain that query, let me write one more simple query. Let me copy the query which is at line number 11. Select star from athena.user. Okay. So write few more steps here. Use athena, control enter, so that I need not every time say athena.user, athena.user. I need not say, I can directly say from here onwards user. So it only refers to Athena schema. So line number 18 will fetch you some records like, okay, let me do one thing. Let me create a new SQL and use here use Athena and select start from user. It will fetch some records for you. Okay, it has fetched some records. Now let me change the query at line number 3 to something else. I say select user underscore id comma user underscore name comma user underscore password from user table. Okay, hit enter. Same output if you see in the console. Okay, so the output is also saved in this scenario. But what did I do? Instead of star, I mentioned all the column names. Okay, now I will make a simple change here, and let's see what I'm trying to do here is I will give an alias name. For user, I will give an alias name called as U or anything or ABC. Okay, I gave an alias name called ABC. So what I can do is I can change this like this. Select ABC dot user ID. Same way everything comes up. When I say ABC dot username comma ABC dot user underscore password. Okay, say control enter. Same output. One Raghu secret, two Navin top secret. So writing a query either like line number 3 or line number 4 or line number 6, it doesn't make any difference. 3 says that fetch everything. 4 says that fetch all the expected columns that you want. And 6 says something like, if suppose if you have something called as an user and you can give an alias name. Giving this alias name is more useful when you want to fetch from multiple tables actually. But still you can use this alias name. Okay. Now the concept here is Hibernate also uses an alias name. See what is the alias name it uses? This is the alias name that uses. So okay, let me one more thing that I need to write here. Line number 6 query, I'm modifying again a little bit at line number 8. See here. Select abc.user underscore id as id and name, user underscore name as name. Okay. Only two things that I modified. Now, let me execute line number 8. When I execute line number 8, did you notice here, when I say as ID, the column name has changed to ID. As name, I said the column name has changed to name, and for this one, I did not say as user ID. So I did not say anything as user password or anything. So it still uses the default column name. So what is this? This is nothing but if you want to specify any column header name or custom header name, that is what I can say using as, right? So now if I need to change my query at line number 8, okay, notice here what Hibernate is doing is this is the alias name. Okay, so instead of abc, I say the alias name is this one. So I change this as the alias name, the alias name, abc alias name. After that, it says the first one must be used as this one. So instead of id, has some. So these are some random values that Hibernate is generating. Okay, I'm just doing the same thing and explaining you that that is nothing specific apart from some random junk values that Hibernate is generating for you. Okay, that's the query. So if I execute line number 8, did you notice here it again shows the column names as user 1 underscore 0 underscore uh, 0 underscore 2 underscore 0 underscore like this, and it fetches the same old output. So line number 10, which is generated by the Hibernate, is exactly same as line number 3 or 4 or 6 or 8 or anything. Is that clear to everyone? Like what is the query that Hibernate is firing for you? Okay, that's good. So let me go back to this table and see here. And team, the most important thing that I want you to understand here is I never wrote a table name here. I wrote a class name. Even though I'm writing a class name, it is still going to the database and fetching the records. Why? Because the user DTO is pretty much equivalent to, sorry, in the mapping file, if you go, the user DTO is pretty much equivalent to a user table. So since we already made a mapping, Hibernate understands this mapping. We change user. Okay, so let me take. So yeah, but continuing with that, so you can. This is how Hibernate takes this as a reference and does that. So now the question comes is, but can we change user underscore one generated by Hibernate? Okay, I'm not sure if we can ideally change it or not, but there is no meaning in changing it. Why? Because we never deal with these header columns, right? User underscore one underscore zero, we never deal with these things. It is just for internal purpose that Hibernate is generating for you. All we need is the exact data that we need. We don't think like whether is it using underscore some alias name or is it using some column name or not, but all we need is what is the data that it is fetching. Is it fetching user id, username and user password, the three columns that we need or not? That is what we in general care about. So but the answer to that is like I'm not sure like if we can change it or not, but as far as my understanding goes, I think we cannot change it actually.
Raghu,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, line 22, where we're saying from user DTO.
Mm-hmm.
And then instead of going to user DTO, it goes to the HBM.xml, correct?
Okay, no. When I say user DTO, okay, let me complete this and then you can ask your more doubts. Okay, so when I say user DTO, what is that I am writing? There are two things that you need to observe here. Line number 17 and line number 22. Okay. Line number 17, what am I writing? I am writing an SQL. When I write an SQL, I must exactly write the table name. I must exactly write the column names. But line number 22, am I writing an SQL? No, I am not writing an SQL. What am I writing? I am writing HQL, Hibernate Query Language. When I am using Hibernate Query Language, and when I say user DTO, okay, when I say user DTO, this is what Hibernate thinks. Let us assume that like this, you have written some 10 mapping files, okay, 10 HBM files. Now when you say user DTO, Hibernate thinks, okay, the user wants to fetch the data from user DTO class. But what exactly the user DTO class is mapped to? So Hibernate immediately checks all the configuration files and understands that, okay, when the user says user DTO, it means the user table on the database side. So it goes to user table, fires a query and gets the data for you. Yeah, go ahead with the question now.
So yeah, that was the pretty much that was the question. But so when we write, do we have to write from user DTO or can we write just user DTO? Could we have?
We need to write from user DTO. That's the basic syntax.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So if you see here, like there are a couple of more syntaxes that maybe if you, I'll give you a reference from where you can refer all these things and all. Okay, but the basic scenario here is I no longer deal with the table names or column names. I just deal with the Java class names and the property names. Okay, so now the next question. I want to get only the user name from the table. Okay, so the next thing that I do here is I say I want to get all the usernames. Strlst equal to, see here the query that I'm writing is session dot create query, and again I will write an HQL. In HQL you deal with only table and properties. So what is that you want? Select, you want a username. So what is that username here? Uname. Okay, see here, select uname from where do you want to fetch? User DTO dot list. That's all. So see from here I say for I get a string str in strlst this out. See the last query which it fires because of line number 32. So because of line number 32, see here select. Okay, let me just print this out here. See the last query, select user underscore name from the user table. It is fetching all the usernames from the user table. But did I write the column names here? I never wrote a column name. As a Java developer, I feel comfortable writing, dealing with properties, saying that uname and user DTO. This is what I do. So dealing it with the help of class names and properties only. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. That's good. Now let us write one. Yeah, means as in when you practice, like the concept here is like it would be clear if you practice more actually. So let me do one more thing. String str equal to session dot create query, and here I say something like select password. Okay, what is the property name? Password directory. Select password from user DTO where uname equal to Raghu. Okay, dot only unique result. Why? Because it only expects. Oh, okay, I need to typecast it to string. So why? Because in this scenario, when I ask for a password for a specific user, I need to get only one result. Okay, so I say unique result and try to execute it. Hmm, this query, whatever I have written here at line number 39, is mostly useful for our purpose, like all the examples that we deal with for fetching the password for a user in the login scenario. We can use this query. Okay, see the last one, select password user underscore password from user table where user underscore name equal to Raghu. The password is secret, that is what it shows. And the next scenario, sometimes, okay, at line number 39 we cannot hard code the value Raghu like that, right? We need to make sure that we can pass the value dynamically. That is what we need to do. So how do I pass the value dynamically? So let me explain the concept. Strchem. So see here, select password from user DTO where user name equal to. If you remember in our old concept of JDBC, where when we want to pass some dynamic values and all, what we did is like we used a question mark. So if I use a question mark, the concept here is like the dynamic value can be replaced with that question mark by saying that set parameters int or blah blah blah. But here there is a different approach that we follow. So that approach is called as like any named parameters that we need to pass. Okay, so for that you need to give in a specific way, colon uh, dv, I say, like a dynamic value. Okay, dynamic value, so I say colon dv. Okay, so now all I need to do is I need to make sure that I can execute that query by passing a dynamic value. So the dynamic value to that query that I can set here is I can say create query dot set. Okay, yeah, dot set parameter. So what is that parameter that I want to set? The parameter that I want to pass is nothing but dv. Okay, dynamic value dv. So for dv, assign a value called, let us assume that this is the value that you are getting dynamically every time. So say Naveen dot unique result. Okay, so I hope you remember like passing a question mark. Instead of question mark we give some named parameters. Okay, colon dv, and if I have few more things I can say like comma and blah blah blah, some more column equal to colon abc. Now here again I need to set one more parameter like what is ABC taking. Okay, like that I can pass some dynamic values, and if I go ahead and execute, see the query, select user underscore password from the user table where user underscore name equal to question mark. That is the query which Hibernate is firing for you. That question mark will be replaced by Naveen. Okay, this is the value which we are passing, and the output is top secret. That is what is being shown for us. Okay, what is the advantage of DV? Very good question. So let us assume that, can you hard, okay, tell me one scenario. Can you hard code, let me go back to, hmm, okay, I'm going back to our old project site. So select user underscore password from user where user underscore name equal to question mark I wrote here. Can I write a query like line number 22 as is shown here, or should I write a query like this? Which is the right way? The first one or this approach? Using a question mark is the right way, right? Now, why did we write a question mark? So that the question mark in our regular JDBC statement specifies that, hey, that is a dynamic value that you need to pass. So where are you setting the dynamic value? You are saying that if there are 5 question marks in your query, you need to say 1 means first question mark, 2 means second question mark. So in this scenario, since there is only one question mark, you are saying 1 comma username. Who is sending this username? Someone else is sending, means from the front end you are getting this username. So this question mark will be replaced with this username. Now the same way in Hibernate, instead of question mark, you will write some named parameters, colon ABCD. Now here you need to say statement dot set parameter, that ABCD that you wrote, okay, that is the named parameter as this username. So why we are using ABCD in Hibernate? That is nothing but colon ABCD, that is a named parameter. That is the basic concept of injecting dynamic values like question mark in our old JDBC statements. Does that make sense, or you have some other doubt, right? And for everyone else, okay, that's good. So that's okay. Got it. Okay, but I hope like things are clear for everyone, like how you can use. Can I understand it as just the way it is? Means can you repeat your question so that I can understand like what exactly do you mean, Adi?
Yeah, like no any meanings like to it. That's just how we write, kind of. Is that okay to assume?
Yeah, means I will tell one thing. Let me know if it is clear for you or not. In JDBC, if you want to pass dynamic values, use question marks. But in Hibernate,
Yes.
if you want to pass dynamic values, use colon. Okay, use colon for followed by any name X, Y, Z. So now you need to
Okay.
set this XYZ here. What is that XYZ meaning? XYZ meaning nothing but a dynamic value that you get from somewhere. So they are called
Okay.
as named parameters. Yeah, that's correct.
Right.
In real world, we will never use a hard-coded values as I wrote at line number 39. So we use something called as a named parameters where you give a name and you set that name to a dynamic value in real world. Clear, everyone? Okay, yeah, that's good. So now there is one more concept I think most frequently that can also be used in Hibernate, that is called as criteria query. Okay, like how we write these queries, a create query and all those things. There is one more thing called criteria query that can be again used in Hibernate, where there are a lot of restrictions that you can add on top of it. Okay, so sometimes people feel that as more comfortable, so they go with those things. So a simple example, if you want to see a criteria, ct equal to session dot create criteria, and what is the criteria on which one you want to use this criteria. I want to use this criteria on user dto dot class. Okay, once I write an example and show you the output, it will be clear for you. So I want to write a criteria, I want to use a criteria query just like the regular HQL queries that I wrote. So on what class I want to use? I want to use the criteria on a class called user DTO. Now, in user DTO, I want to fetch, okay, I want to fetch all the records which are like, see, let me start writing something and show you. Criteria dot add. Here is what again comes something called as restrictions. Restrictions, again Hibernate given class. So I say restrictions. You can use a lot of things, right? See here, dot equals, restrictions dot equals. What is that you want to do? Let me write, okay, let me write few different scenarios and explain the stuff here. I want to say, like if I go to my user DTO, I want to fetch all the records where the user ID is equal to 2, okay, or all the columns, say user ID comma 2. Okay, for understanding purpose, the concept is very easy, team. Create a criteria and say add a restriction where user ID eq equals to 2. That is what I want to do. So I can retrieve that and store it in an object, right? So when I say I want to store it in an object, again the same old concept, user dto user equal to, all I say is like I convert the output into user DTO and I say criteria dot, I need to get only one result, unique result, and I can say this out. I want to fetch the username since I got the entire object. So I say user dot get username. Okay, so on the user DTO class, which means it goes to the user table, and if the ID is 2, see the last query, select user underscore ID, user underscore name, user underscore password from the user table where the user underscore ID is equal to question mark, that is nothing but 2. Okay, I'm adding a restrictions and retrieving some data for you. So let me add few more restrictions here. I say user restrictions like, okay, I want to fetch all the usernames which has a in them. Okay, I say percentage a percentage, which means it can start with anything, it can end with anything, and in between if it has something called as an a, fetch me all those records. Okay, so now restriction, now I get more records, I get multiple records. Okay, and I can also add more restrictions like ct dot add restrictions dot like And also I would like to say in the password also, if the user has some settings like percentage a percentage. So what is my criteria here? If the username like it contains a, and if the password also like it contains, if it contains this a, then fetch me those records. So it will not, ideally it will not fetch me unique records. So what it will do, it will fetch me a lot of records. So I say instead of this list user dto and I will not get unique results, and I say criteria dot list. Okay, I get a list of records. Again, the same old concept that I can do. I can iterate and do some stuff, but let me put a debug point here and show you that instead of printing all the stuff and all. Oh, I did not run in debug mode, I guess. So here it came here. I'll execute this. Now if you see user, see here. Oh, it says 0. Top secret. Oh, okay. It has executed correctly. Why? Because in none of my passwords I have a character called a in it, so the output is right. So that's the reason why user list is empty, size is 0. If you observe the query, it has filed select user underscore id, user underscore name, user underscore password from the user table where user underscore name like, user underscore password like. Now let me change the password to e. Okay, when I say change my password to e, or when I say the password as secret secret, okay, and save it and run it once again, I'm just going to debug it. Here it came here. Now here's the f6. It has filed a query. If you see user, it has two records. Okay, both user records. Why? Because the user names, okay, the user names contain a, Raghu a and Naveen a, and both the passwords contain something called as a secret and secret. That is the reason why it has fetched two records. Okay, so this is more of like a restrictions API or a criteria API that you can use. Okay, criteria, and in turn it can use some restrictions. Okay, clear with this concept also? Okay, that's good thing. So the next step that I would like to explain here is how to integrate the same old concept of uh, Hibernate into one of our projects. Okay, how to integrate Hibernate into a structs project. That is what I will explain. Okay, integrating Hibernate into structs is very easy. So what I do here is the first step. Let me take our structs project, and in the structs project, first let me add all the required libraries. So what I do here is, here are the libraries. Now let me go here and screen. Okay, Hibernate basics, reference libraries. Okay, Okay, I just forgot to explain one very important concept here in Hibernate, the most important concept. I'll do that after adding all these jars. Just 5 more minutes, that's all. Okay, so the very important concept that I missed out is like one of the configurations that we do in at line number 13, that is called as dialect. Okay, MySQL dialect. The basic advantage and power of Hibernate is if you are writing the queries in the form of HBM, sorry, HQL. Okay, instead of writing native SQLs, if you are writing Hibernate query languages, then what exactly this dialect does is, today if your company is using MySQL, then all the queries that you write here, okay, all the queries that you write here will be converted, okay, while they are being filed, they will be converted into MySQL understandable language, MySQL understandable queries. Tomorrow if your company comes and says that, hey, change from MySQL database to Oracle database, if your company says that, in a real world, if you're using a plain old JDBC, you need to use, if you need to change a lot of database queries. Why? Because sometimes some custom queries might be different from MySQL and Oracle. The same way, between any two different databases, some of the functionalities and the functions that they use might differ. But if you are using Hibernate, if your company says that, hey, use Oracle, all you do is you come here and instead of saying MySQL dialect, you say Oracle dialect, and here instead of MySQL jar, you will use an Oracle jar, and you will change or in the class path. Okay, in the class path, you will use or you will add the Oracle specified jar file, so that what will happen is you need not change anything in your code. What Hibernate will do is Hibernate will see this dialect, and all the HQL queries that you write, okay, will be converted into Oracle understandable SQL statements. So the conversion from HQL to the underlying platform can be done based on the dialect that you configure. And after some time, your company comes and says that, hey, change from Oracle back to MySQL. So all you do is you make these changes, that's all. Okay, the two changes at line number 8 and line number 13, that change to MySQL driver and change to MySQL dialect. So all the queries will be compatible to MySQL itself because of the Hibernate. Is that sentence clear to everyone? The use of a dialect in Hibernate? Okay, that's good. Now let's go back to this, yeah, along with the addition of the required jars. Okay, let's go to Hibernate and integrate this simple thing. In Hibernate, what is this? First struts project, I say I do have a DTO. So UID, uname and upassword, that is what I have. So let me copy some configurations from here. So what I do is I copy hbm.xml, both the things, and paste it here and say some configuration changes. User.hbm.xml. The name is user DTO, com.easylearnjava.dto.user.dto. Good. Table is user. The in the user DTO, it is user ID, uname and upassword. So I say uname, upassword. I say upassword. Then all the mapping configurations are done in Hibernate. Now the next thing here is I will copy this Hibernate util into this util package. So instead of asking a connection object from DB connection, I will ask from Hibernate util from now onwards. Okay. So let me copy login DAO as is and paste it as H login DAO, Hibernate login DAO. Okay. Now in Hibernate login DAO, what is that I need? Do I need all this stuff? Connection, blah blah blah, all these things? Oh, excuse me. I don't need all these things. I need a session object. Session equal to null. Control Shift O. Import the session object. org.hibernate.session. Then let me do one thing. Let me close. Let me remove all this code that I have written. Okay. Now the statement that I'm going to write here is, see, very basic stuff. Okay. So see here, it's not in string here. I say password from DB. Let me change it also to password from DB. Password. Okay. As simple as that. So what is the password from DB? Select password from user, not password. It is U password now. Why? Because see here in user DTO, what is the property name? U password. Okay. Select U password from user DTO where U name equal to XYZ and this XYZ must be replaced with this USR name. So dot set parameter XYZ as nothing but the username. That's all. It gets a password and it returns back to you. Now from my login service, instead of calling the login DAO, I call Hibernate login DAO. Control Shift O, import that Hibernate login DAO. That's all I do. I place a breakpoint at line number 9, go ahead and execute my project, debug as debug on server, say finish. One second, it's taking some time to deploy. So now I say the username as Raghu, hit enter. So it's debugging. What is this happening? Okay, let me do one thing. Go to servers, string MVC, delete this, and string MVC project. Let me close this project. It is reference something wrong libraries. Okay, close project for time being. First starts project. And doing this with the Spring is not, means it is also the same way, but maybe I will explain that in a different class type because it has something else called as a session factory in a different way that configured out. Explain that. So secret. Okay, it came to login form. Okay. Now see here, it came to the login service. Till here it is clear to everyone. In our old project we used to call our login DAO, but here I am calling my H login DAO, my Hibernate login DAO class, and here I do an F8 once again. I come to this session, and what is the username that I am passing from the front end? Raghu. Okay. So now I fire this query, select u password, which is nothing but a property in my user DTO class, from user DTO, where u name equal to xyz. The xyz will be automatically replaced with the dynamic value Raghu. Okay, and I need to get the output. So as soon as I say F6, see the console. So it has not printed. Okay, there is some exception. One second. What is the exception? Null pointer exception. Oh, session is null. One second. Let's see why session is not created. So first structs project, and here I wrote Hibernate util properties. Sorry, I did not get the question. Oh, okay. Yeah, I got you. All I did is like I just copy pasted this code, but the main important thing that I just forgot is like Hibernate util, which is equal to new Hibernate util, Control Shift O, and I need to say like session equal to util dot get session. This is what I need to write, right? First we need to get the session from that util. Since I have not written that line number 16 and 17, it is null. So the context has reloaded. Hope it should work fine. So log into my app. Everything is good. F8, F8. I came here. Now I say F5. Go into that method. F6, 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 F6. So now ideally in the background it should load everything. Yeah, it is loading everything. So it is talking to Athena schema. And it is creating a session. Okay, it has created a session. Now I will say F6 again. You should see a query that should be filed here. Okay, something went wrong. Let's check what is the problem. And tell log. Okay. Yeah, some problem with the jar files. Oh, that should work fine. Okay, see here. It shows select user DTO select user underscore password from user table where user underscore name equal to the question mark. So if you see the password that I got is secret. Okay. So did you see like how easy is it to integrate Hibernate I complete this one and it goes to a success page. Successfully logged into struts app. Okay. If you see here how easy is it to integrate struts, all you need to do is add the required libraries, then get the cfg.xml and get the hvm.xml, and all you need to do is based on these properties you just change your hvm mappings. Like if you need to change any of the things, map these things, and just create a session object in the Hibernate util and call the session and get it. Is that clear to everyone how to integrate struts and Hibernate? Okay, any doubts, any questions? Okay, if so, just I'm just stopping the recording.